Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Kinsley. I'm a librarian here at the Medical Center Library, and thank you for coming to our research workshop series. This is the first one of the 2023 calendar year, and today is Tuesday, January 24th. And today we are having a presentation on, as you see on the screen, NIH Data Management and Sharing Plan with Lauren Robinson and Rebecca Morgan. So with that, I will go ahead and let them start.
All right, hello everybody. It's so nice of you to join us today. My name is Rebecca Morgan. I'm going to start this presentation, as Jason said, on the NIH Data Management and Sharing Plan. I am the health sciences, or I'm a health sciences librarian. I share that with my colleague Kayla Robinson, but I'm also the liaison to the College of Pharmacy. Lauren, do you want to introduce yourself before we start?
Yes, that'd be great. Can you all hear me okay? My camera and microphone's acting up a little bit. Yeah, my name's Lauren Robinson. I'm the medicine liaison librarian. I serve the College of Medicine and as well as the clinical parts of the college as well.
All right, so let's get started then. All right, in today's session, we are going to cover the new NIH Data Management and Sharing Plan, the changes that come with the implementation of this plan, which is going live tomorrow, I believe, right? Not today, it's tomorrow. We're also going to cover the new Office of Science and Technology policy document that has come out that's not going to go live until 2025, but it's going to have some major implications to how data is handled in terms of publication and sharing going forward. We're going to talk a little bit about what exactly we mean by sharing, because there's some nuance to the definition when it comes to data that people aren't necessarily aware of. And then we're going to spend about half our time focusing on tools and resources that are available to you to help guide implementation. Tools like DMP tool, templates that can help you figure out what you need to include in your plans when you're applying for grants from now on to stay in compliance with these new policies. And we will have time for questions at the end, so if you don't mind just holding on to your questions, we would appreciate it. All right, so before we really kick in, we want to talk very briefly about why medical librarians are involved in this, because some people might think, oh, this is under the purview of the research office. What do librarians really have to do with these initiatives? And the reason is because, librarianship has advanced very far beyond the traditional just working with books. We're very involved in research, and particularly the National Library of Medicine, which is part of the NIH, has been one of the key allies and leaders in creating these new data policies and plans. As information professionals, our jobs are to find information and make sure that it is retrievable. And so we fit very neatly into these issues of data sharing and these developments in data management. Just for a little background, there are two key medical library organizations that are very involved in these new policies, not just creating them, but also in the sharing and training of people to be compliant with them. First of all is the NLM, which I just mentioned, which is the National Library of Medicine and is the largest biomedical library in the world. Their job is more to create these policies, or to be part of creating these policies, making sure that they are possible, making sure that people know exactly what kind of data and metadata needs to be collected in order to make information retrievable. And then on the other side, we have the NNLM, which is, ridiculously similar, but it is the National Network of Libraries of Medicine. So instead of being the one single library that is under the NIH, the NNLM is made up of all the little sub medical libraries like us here at UK, who are responsible for interfacing directly with researchers, clinicians, students, faculty, anybody who's doing medical research in our own institutions or in our communities. And one thing the NNLM does is they do provide free trainings on research data management. So they've really taken, a good leadership role in helping develop these initiatives. So let's now talk a little bit about what is so important about data sharing. But before we do that, we need to talk a little bit about what we mean by the data that is actually being shared. We hear so often that people say, oh, well, I am sharing my data. I'm sharing it in the actual article. I'm including my data in there. And that's not actually what we're talking about when we're talking about data. We're talking about the actual raw data is needing to be shared now. When you're sharing charts or graphs or plots in your articles and your publications, that is an expression of data. And so what we are asking for now is the raw data, your spreadsheets, your collected databases of data, so it can actually be looked at granularly instead of just relying on how you have processed your data and expressed it in your articles and your research. And why is this so important? You know, why do we need to go beyond the work you've already done to express your data? There's several reasons for this, which you can see in this basic data life cycle kind of little cycle here. The real key part of it is reproducibility. We need to make sure that people are able to see exactly what was done in the research and to make sure that it is actually reproducible. And that also reduces redundancy, keeps people from necessarily having to do the same experiments or the same research projects over and over again in order to validate them or just continue the work with them. It provides better peer review. It allows for there to be a check to make sure that the calculations that were done in the expressions of the data were actually accurate. It increases collaboration, and it's also, again, just transparency, which ties into all of these other concepts. And so, because we are pushing towards this reproducibility, transparency, and overall, better sharing policies, 2 new policies are coming out, very soon in one case, in the future in the other. And let's just cover them really briefly now. I'm actually going to start on the right with the NIH data management and sharing policy. So what this new plan is, which is it being implemented tomorrow, is it is requiring that anybody who is submitting a grant for public funding, for federal funding through the NIH, mentions how data will both be managed and budgeted, or the data sharing will be managed and budgeted. So previously it was a data management plan. You had to talk about what you were going to do with your data, how you were going to collect it. Sharing should have been a part of that, but they're making it much, much stricter on requiring how you are actually going to share it. And by share it, we mean not just, put it in an article, share it with people that ask for it. You can't just say anymore, I will make my email available and someone can send it to me. Instead, they're expecting you to put it into an actual repository. And you need to plan for that as you are submitting your grant. You need to say, I'm going to put it into this repository. I'm factoring the cost that it might take to process it, to store it, to do the metadata for it. I might need to hire someone to do that depending on the size of the data, but that all needs to now be included in your data management and sharing plan. The other thing that they're expecting is that your data will be available publicly as soon as your grant is finished. So even if you have not published yet, according to this policy, as I understand it, and as it has been explained to me and other people who have been to presentations with the NIH director of data standards sharing policies, is that even if your grant is finished, you have to make the data public. So you can probably apply for grant extensions, but either way, you need to be sure that you are going to have your data publicly, available as soon as your grant is completed or at the point of publication, whichever comes first. And the OSTP document, which is from the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy, is they're taking that a little farther. They're removing all data embargoes, and actually all embargoes in general. Now that's not coming into effect until December 2025. So there's some time to adjust to that. But essentially what they're saying is that you can't publish an article and then a few months down the line, then make the data available. It needs to be available at the time of publication, period. Lauren, is there anything you'd like to add before I move any further?
Yeah, I would add in that the OSTP policy is not just for NIH
Yes.
data, it's going to be for every type of federally funded research.
So that is how it expands it out. The NIH one is now just for NIH grants. The OSTP one is going to expand this wider into every form of federal funding. Thank you, Lauren. And so to help with this, there has been a push towards GREI, which is the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative. And basically, it's an initiative from the National Institutes of Health where they are trying to make sure that everybody is aware and supporting these generalist databases to deposit your data into. These generalist repositories. So if you have a research subject that fits neatly into an existing, let's say, NIH database, like Alzheimer's database, different drug resources ones, there's very specific ones, HIV and AIDS ones, where they fit your subject matter, then that is supposed to take priority. But if you have something that doesn't fit neatly into these like already subject specific repositories, then the goal is basically to say, well, look at all these generalist repositories that you can put your data into, and they're OSF, Figshare, Zenodo, which I'm actually not as familiar with, Mendeley Data, Dataverse, Dryad, Bibly. There might even be a few more, but these are the big 7. And the point is, again, that you are just planning ahead of your project. As you are submitting a grant, you're able to say, I want to put my information in one of these databases if I don't have a subject specific one. So you are accounting for that. So you can do the research and make sure that if they have a fee that applies to submitting your data, that you are able to, maybe even cover that in the grant, and think ahead. So you don't suddenly get to the point where you suddenly have to put your data somewhere, you have no idea where. It's just making sure you're really planning ahead. It's that foresight that is so key to the change in moving from data management plans to data management and sharing plans. And another part of this is that it really gives me the sense, like right now, this is not required. This is just a heavy suggestion. I think they're definitely moving to requiring this. And part of it, I believe, and I think Lauren also believes, is that they are moving away from institutional repositories. Unless if it is a subject-specific institutional repository or a larger one, when stuff gets very siloed in all these smaller little repositories, it makes it much less accessible and harder to find. And so if we are moving to these generalist repositories, that helps take care of, in some cases, securing the data. It takes some of the cost away from universities and academic centers from having to fund these rapidly growing repositories, or at least they will be once these requirements go into effect, and also create centralized hubs that people will be able to search to find data, as opposed to having to, kind of seek and find on their own through different institutions, or just through the web, trying to find where this data could be housed. And let's talk a little bit more now about what do the federal agencies actually mean by sharing. And we touched on this a little bit because we said that, they want the raw data, not the expressions of data. They really, really, truly want to make sure that the data is reproducible and understood, and that it is completely retrievable. There's been a big misunderstanding about what sharing actually means. It means putting it into a repository for public access. It doesn't, as I said earlier, mean sharing it with your colleagues, just making an email available and then I'll send it to whoever asks for it. They found that in many, many cases, even though it was done with good intentions, these less standardized ways of sharing data have failed, and huge amounts of data have been lost as a result. And so by forcing the standardization, forcing it to go into a repository, to think of this ahead of time, to share it with the public, to make it publicly available for preservation purposes, not just access, that is the real key and goal to these new policies. Because the thinking goes, this is publicly funded money, this is federal money. And so therefore, if the taxpayers are funding it, the taxpayers should be able to access the actual data that was generated through these grants, not just the articles itself and the end product. Anything you would like to add there, Lauren?
Nope, I think you covered it.
And it also covers secondary data. So secondary data that you are not producing yourself, but you are pulling in from other avenues. You need to account now in your data management and sharing plans exactly what data sets are going to be used, how they are going to be accessed, what actual data is taken from them. And again, the whole point is just to think ahead, to make things easier for you later, and to also make it more replicable and reproducible in the future. And then a lot of people suddenly get worried and say, well, what about PHI, PII, public health information, any confidential information, public personal identifiable information? All data user agreements will supersede the new data management policy. They're not expecting you to just suddenly like throw out all your raw data, even if it has PII. No, it's you're able to protect the data that needs to be protected, and all the user agreements, anything about any policies that exist about the handling of PHI or PII, all of that comes first before this data policy. What they're trying to do is just make sure that everything that is not protected is out there, with the caveat that it is the data that is directly linked to your findings. So if you collected a huge amount of data, including some, extra metadata or, extraneous data that ultimately does not tie directly into your findings, as long as that is not needed for data identification or, reading a code book or something like that, you don't have to include it. They really only want you to release the data that ties directly to the findings, to the hypothesis of your research.
I would throw out there too, just as a quick note, like they want you to think ahead though. They want you to say why and acknowledge that this is a data use agreement. Where is the data coming from in your data management sharing policy? They still want you to address your secondary data issues that you will be facing.
Yes, thank you. And my part is coming to an end. Before I turn it over to Lauren, I do just want to point out that we as medical librarians, we can help you, if you're looking at this and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my own data? We can definitely be here as a resource. We can help you find tools and resources to help guide compliance. Lauren is going to go into that in greater detail in just a moment. We can help you give, broader overviews, interpretations of policies and data management sharing plans. But if you have some really fine-tuned questions that tie directly to your reasons, well, what about research? Like, what about patents? What about the specific incidents? Well, I'm not sure I'm understanding this bit of nuance. You can email directly Taunton Payne. He is the director of NIH's Scientific Data Sharing Policy Division. So he is one of the authors of this policy and one of the leaders that has come to some of our conferences that we've spoken to about compliance with this policy. So he's very responsive. I definitely suggest emailing him directly, and if he can't answer it, someone in his division will absolutely be able to help you. So now I'm going to throw it over to Lauren. And
So I'm going to talk more about some of the tools that are available to you here at UK Libraries, as well as ones that have been developed by medical librarians and data librarians across the country. Next, thank you. So there are two groups. I have attended many of these meetings. That's where a lot of these tools and resources come from. So you have RDAP, which is the Research Data Access and Preservation Group, and you have the Medical Library Association's Data Caucus, or SIG, Special Interest Group. Both of these groups are made up of data librarians and medical librarians who help with data. These two groups formed an informal group called the Working Group on NIH DMSP Guidance for Data Support Services. So this group of medical librarians and data librarians develop these tools that are freely available to you to help you with your data management and sharing plans. Next slide, please. So what is the working group working on? So they've actually almost finished all of their work. The only thing that's not out yet is the repository finder. We will make that available on our guides, which I'll show you at the end, when it is available. That's going to be a searchable tool, and I'll talk a little bit more of that in a little bit. But that's the only thing not available today. There are several glossaries. There's a checklist for you as a researcher. The policy readiness checklist is really related to libraries and institutions, but it's also a tool available to you that's free. We have also ways to access sample plans, and I'll talk some about that. You can access the entire Open Science Framework platform that has all of this stuff in it, but I also have direct links in these slides that you can click on, and it'll take you directly to the glossary, for example. But this link here will take you to the full project. Next slide, please. So the first one up is the glossaries. So these glossaries will help you understand what they mean by specific terms. So what do they mean by metadata? What do they mean by preservation? And these glossaries will help you define that and give you examples. And plan, and you want to know what they mean. There's also grant speak and context. This is really helpful for librarians and people who are brand new to grant writing and how to write a data management plan for a grant. So that's also a glossary of the different definitions there. And there's also a README file. Almost every single one of these areas has a README file that you can look at and see what these tools were made for and how to use them. And all those links are to the individual pieces. And on the right, you can see example of what this tool looks like. Next slide, please. So this is probably the one that's going to be really helpful for you all. It is a checklist, and it follows the format of the new 2-page requirement. You can't exceed 2 pages on your data management plan. And this is a
You cut out for a second, Lauren. Would you mind repeating the last sentence you said?
Yeah, sorry, my camera and video thing's acting up. So yes, so this on the right is a checklist for you. It follows the 2-page requirement and all the headings that are required by the new data management sharing plan. So you can actually write your data management sharing plan, use this checklist, and go down. And you need to make sure you've addressed all of these sections inside of your data management plan. And again, these have been written by experts, by medical and data librarians who have been living with this policy and working on it all through its conception. So it's a really great place to start. So you can see here that you have data type, tools and software, standards, access and reuse, data preservation and access, and timelines and oversight and sharing. And on the right, you can see the first 3. And on the next slide, you can see the other 4, or the other 3, 4 through 6. And again, you can access this checklist right there. I also put the link to the slides inside of the chat at the very beginning. So you can go back and pull that, and you can click on all of this. And this will also be up after our presentation. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the one that I get a lot of questions about. So how do I, are there any examples? How do I access examples of data management and sharing plans? So this group actually went through and created an annotated sample plan. It's a mock-up. Can you click on that one for me? It's the very first check mark, Becky. Thank you. So here you can actually see this annotated plan. It's a PDF. And if you scroll through it, there are orange sections that or they're gray here, it looks like, but there are highlighted sections that will give you annotations on things to include. And there's also an example text on this one as well. So it's a really great place to go if you want to see like some feedback on how a data librarian or a medical librarian looked at this, or some standard wordage. Okay. Back. Thank you. The other.
You cut out again, Lauren. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Can you click on the second check mark for me?
Sure.
So this is also a searchable work, webpage that was developed, and these are examples of data management sharing plans that the group believes meet their requirements of the new DMSP. So there are links here under the URL. You can click and go view those. These are some with these have been found, or these are ones that the different members have worked on or worked with these researchers. So this is a really good place to go to try and see what people in your field might be doing. So there's ones in data science, public health, psychology, ophthalmology. Okay, can you go back for me? Okay. So, and if you want to learn more about these samples, you can actually go to the README file, and I've linked that as well. There's actually a lot of data there. These are the most intuitive interfaces that I shared on the first and second check mark. If you want to just see the raw data, it's there as well, but the README will kind of guide you through that. Next slide, please. Okay, repository finder. So I'm hoping that this will be available soon. It's going to be a really great tool when it is available for you all. You'll be able to select different criteria and then get a list of repositories that meet your needs. So these repositories could be included in the generalist ecosystem repository initiative. I always get the E and the R mixed up. Or they also could be subject specific ones. They can be ones that are maintained by NIH, and you can select if you have PHI and all these different criteria, and then get a list of repositories that meet your needs. So this is going to be a really great tool when it's launched, but they're still working on the metadata for the database. So when it's live, we will put it on our guide, and we'll probably share it in a workshop series as well. Next slide, please. So a research and publishing guide. I want to point this out. We have at the health science, or at the medical center library, we have a research and publishing and health sciences guide. Next slide, please. And we have this is the page I want to point out. This is the organize your research page. And here you can go and you can access all of these same things that we've showed you today. It has all the publicly accessible data management plans. It has the annotated sample plan. It has the glossaries. It has everything that you'll need. And when the repository finder is launched, it will be here as well. So this is a really great place to go for accessing these tools. You can also go to our slides and you can reach out to us and we can help you with that. But I wanted to point this out. So it's also a great place for other information like the, if you're interested in publishing your research and open access and anything related to data and scholarly communications in the health sciences can be found here. Next slide, please. Okay, so another tool that we have, again, we're going to be offering a session on data management and sharing tools in March, I believe, or no, in February. So please attend that. We'll be going more into DMP tool. We'll be going into some other tools that we're going to be launching. But again, this is, I'm going to do a small intro into DMP tool. So what is DMP tool? The DMP tool is a data management software that provides researchers with fillable forms and will walk you through the process. Again, a lot of the people who help develop these tools that I've shown you today have worked with DMP tool on developing the forms that you fill out in DMP tool. UK Libraries does provide access to DMP tool, and it will support you in the data sharing template. So it says forthcoming. Once it's no longer forthcoming, it will change over to the regular data sharing plan template. So right now you can see the current data template, but as of tomorrow, it should switch over to the data sharing to the new one. There's also other templates for other grants. There's hundreds of them in there, but again, the NIH one is the one that's probably the most pertinent right now. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is DMP tool and what it looks like. It has provided, so this is a template and it's fill in the blank. So what are you planning on researching? What is the organization? It's just fill in the blank as you go forth, and you can actually select what DMP template you want. There are, again, hundreds of them there. Next slide, please. You can add contributors as well. So you can have multiple people working on it. So right now, this has been based off the draft template. Again, it's pretty much finalized, I believe, at this point. So those updates have been made. So as of tomorrow, it is the finalized template. And it goes through those same areas that I've shown you throughout the rest of the presentation: the data type, the tools and software, standards, how you're going to preserve and access it, how you're going to share it and reuse it, and how are you going to conduct oversight and sharing long term. Next slide, please. So again, this is an example of what DMP tool looks like when you're logged in. You can see at the top, here's the data type section that follows that same format. And then you get an example. And then there's also another example answer down below. On the right side, you can see NIH guidance. And if you click, which is very similar to the NIH policy piece.
You cut out there, Lauren. I'm sorry, when you click what?
Oh, when you click guidance, you can see NIH or DMP tool. And you can transfer between those two tabs to see DMP tool guidance and NIH guidance. And that's a really great place to go and look at the differences and to see what you might want to put into those sections. We're hoping in the future there'll be some UK guidance put in here that will link to our tools and resources available. But right now, the NIH and the DMP tool guidance is there for you all. You can always reach out to us too if you have any questions. Next slide. So sharing is another great thing you can do here with DMP tool. You have to at least answer half of the questions to change it to visible. You can have organizational versus public view, so you can make it searchable to the world, or you can keep it locked down to the organization. And you can, what's really great is before you finalize, so when you finalize your plan, you can actually register it and get a DMP ID. So you all might be familiar with DOIs, like your articles that you publish have DOIs, your data sometimes has DOIs. You can actually have your data management plan have a unique identifier. So a DMP ID is essentially a DOI for your DMP. And I believe they started to have versioning. So if you need to make edits over time, it will track that versioning and maintain that unique identifier. So that actually helps with transparency and reproducibility of your data management plan, because of course, data management plans can change over time as the project progresses, especially if it's years long. So this is a really great tool. You again have to have at least 50% of the questions answered in order to register it and add it to your ORCID ID. So you can actually add your DMP to your ORCID as well through their third-party application. So it's really linking all that data. It's linking your data set to your data management sharing plan, to your published article, to any metadata and code books that you have. All those can get unique identifiers and link together. And that is the goal of all of this, is to have transparency and reproducibility and linked data all together. Next slide, please. So we can go into live demonstration. Let me see how much time we have, or we can take some questions. We will be doing a full live demonstration of DMP tool in the next session as well. But I've shown you some slides already. So this is what it looks like when you log in. You can actually log in with your single sign-in. And if you've used DMP tool many years ago, you used to have to create an account, but now you don't have to do that. You can just use your single sign-on. Make sure that when you create your DMP tool account, that whatever email you use is the one people are sharing. Like, so if you're sharing between multiple researchers, I have like my laurene.robinson@UKY email, and then I have my linkblue@UKY email. And you have to make sure you're using whatever one you've given is the one that you're sharing with people to DMP. Like, they don't connect in DMP tool. So just make sure I use my laurene.robinson. That's the one I share with people to add me to data management plans, because my linkblue one will not work. So just be aware of whatever you're using there will affect access and sharing. So you can create a plan just by hitting create plan. And when you do that, you've kind of seen this in the slides already. You can hit mock if you just want to play with it. And please fill out the eval form. Again, I just saw that Kayla dropped that in there for us. If you have any ideas, topics that you'd like to see in the future, we're always looking out for what you all are wanting from our workshop series. So please fill out that form. Okay, and then you can hit NIH and then create plan. And what it's going to do is take you to that layout that I showed you a moment ago. And here, so you can add all your project details, you can add collaborators. Again, that's where it's important to make sure you're using that right email. You just fill out all this information. It's fill in the blank, pretty easy to do. And make sure you hit save every time, because if you don't hit save, it doesn't save it. So just make sure you're saving throughout the process. You can add collaborators on collaborators. The right plan is the big meaty part. That's where you're going to see data collection, documentation, ethics, and storage, and all of that. This doesn't have that. Did we select the newest one? We might not have, but. So this could be just in the middle of transition. So it used to have multiple here. Again, this launches tomorrow, so it will be the correct one starting tomorrow. But it looks like they're.
I even checked it this morning, and you could do it and it showed forthcoming. And so I think that they might be in the process of removing it from forthcoming to live. And so of course we do this right in the brief window of time that's probably not available. But what you would do is you would type in NIH or National Institutes of Health, and then it would give you the genomics option, the data management sharing policy option, and then there's a third one that I can't remember what it is. You would select the one you want, and then the guidance, you would go through the steps that we just did, and then the guidance would be built in there.
And in the slides, you saw the example. It had data type, standards, access, and it would follow that same format that we've shown you throughout this presentation. So it looks like we're just hitting it when they're making their updates. So that it's a really simple tool to use, but if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. If you're running into a problem, you can reach out to us. We're always here to help with DMP tool. So that's all that we had, I believe. So we can take some time to answer any questions you all may have. You can unmute yourself and ask those questions, or you can put it into the chat, whatever works best for you. We also have all of our medical librarians here today and our ag librarian. All of us are here just so you know who we are. And if you can always reach out to us individually. I'm medicine, Stephanie's nursing, Kayla's health sciences and public health. Rebecca Morgan is pharmacy and public health, and Jason is our agriculture, food and environment librarian. So we're all here, but we'll be happy to answer questions.
And I do just want to reiterate really quickly what Lauren already said. I know we couldn't do the DMP tool demonstration, but next month.
Oh, and Mark, sorry, I forgot Mark.
Oh, you forgot Mark. There's also there's going to also be a demonstration that includes a live demonstration of DMP tool coming next month. So just make sure you check our research workshop series schedule, and you will get a live demonstration then if you're interested.
I forgot. I'm so sorry, Mark. I forgot that you were here, Mark. And Mark is our dentistry librarian. He is here today as well.
So I have a question about, so I've been working on like when you log into like the NDA data archive and they have those templates. Is that what this is, like, to help us figure out those templates and how we're going to submit those templates?
Yes, I believe so. Like, all these tools are meant to help you make sure you're answering those templates properly in order to have the best success of answering or getting your grant. Does that
right?
help?
So in terms of like, we've got the grant, we're definitely working on, the data archive, getting all that set up. So this DMP tool, if we go back and just go ahead and start with that, then that will help us figure out what data we need to submit on the other end, like those data templates that we're working on.
Yeah. So have you already been awarded the grants and you're?
Oh yeah. We're already, like, we haven't started our subjects running yet. Like, so we probably won't run our first subject till like March or April, but we've signed the data agreement. We've got our, data management system set up and everything, but we're just now working on the data. And the first question, I was so happy that first slide, because I was like, are we doing, like, and I guess I do have a question. So like in terms of the raw data, like we're collecting like daily information for, 4 months. And then we're gonna have like, okay, this is their number at the end of the 4 months. Do they want like all the 4-month data or just like the end number that we're using?
Yes. So Becky can answer that last part. I think I think she attended a presentation that talked about that. But I will say that like this is only for grants that are being submitted moving forward. If you've already been awarded a grant, like then you can apply to whatever was awarded, whatever you wrote in your data management plan.
Right. Okay. So we don't have to retroactively go and do like, we don't need to like really use this tool if we've already been awarded and we're already set up in like clinical trials and all of that.
Right. It's only for moving forward with new grants. But
okay. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for grants being submitted starting tomorrow. It's definitely, I mean, good to maybe go back and look at it and to see the kind of things they're going to look forward to. But for the second part of your question, I mean, it's kind of gray. I mean, they say they want the data that is being used directly. So if you're using all this data to calculate a certain number that is then going to be used, then I mean, I would think that they would probably, believe it or not, want all of it. But I don't think that there's really, because it hasn't been put into practice yet, I don't know what the nuance of the interpretation is yet.
Right, because it seems like a lot of information if I'm entering, 400 subjects, daily data for 4 months.
So one part of this that, I mean, we glossed over a little bit and maybe we should have heightened a little more is that this, I mean, the part of this plan is not just for sharing, it's for budgeting. So going forward, if you are going to have a project where you think you are going to be releasing these terabytes upon terabytes upon terabytes upon terabytes of data where they might want all of that data, then you can write into your grant, potentially assistance for that, computing assistance, software assistance, the cost of maintaining that during the project, and then potentially, the cost of actually sharing it because, that data transfer to a repository would be so strenuous on the system. So in future projects, I mean, you can think about starting to include thoughts about how data sharing is going to work in the actual budgeting of the project. But for now, I mean, I would honestly reach out to, I hate to say this, but I would, if you're really completely unsure about what level of data they're expecting, I mean, you could reach out to Taunton Payne. We included his email and ask him like clarification, like, okay, moving forward, was this good enough or are you going to need all of this? And
I was thinking we have a curator assigned to our project, so I was thinking about just asking them, but this seemed like what you all were talking about. I was like, oh, this seems almost exactly what I'm looking at and what I'm questioning right now. But so it was a lot of good information. I'm kind of glad I don't have to enter everything in the DMP tools. But I do see how it would be very helpful getting things set up. But yeah, we're like at the beginning, but past that stage. But we're like at the point where we're working on those templates and just wanting to know exactly how detailed it's like, because they have some that are like questionnaires. So it's like we just enter each person's questionnaire information like per item. And then there was another template that showed it that it was the scores from the questionnaire. And so one template showed scores from the questionnaires and the other template showed the raw items. So I'm not exactly sure which one they were wanting us to submit. But if we have to do both, that's going to be a whole lot. But but I was assuming one or the other. Like, do we do the scores or do we do the actual, item per items?
And I'm not entirely sure, and I don't feel comfortable necessarily giving guidance on that. But I mean, these are the ways that, like, this policy is going to, for a lot of people, very radically change how they have been managing their data and how they're going to think about, sharing it in the future and what that actually means. This is pretty substantial. It seems on its face like, oh, I'm just going to have to enter a little more information in my sharing plan for it. But no, really, it's good to start thinking about this now, because I'm sure there's going to be future in the coming months, I'm sure the NIH is going to release, I can't think of the word, further information for further clarification of what exactly they mean by some of these things as they start hitting some of these nuances like you're describing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much for all this information. It is a lot. Like when you start to look at it, you're like, whoa, what exactly? And you know, I read somewhere that they said to budget $20,000 a year into the new grants for the data management of this, which that's, you know, some cases a full-time job, depending on salary, like half-time job, you know. So it's looking like we're meeting about this and we're like, what? Like, is this really what we're gonna have to do? But yeah, thank you all for being out there, and we're super excited to have some help on the UK side as well. So thank you.
Oh, we're glad we could be of help.
Definitely. Thank you for coming. And I think we answered the other questions in the chat. It's not like for retrospective, like if you are been awarded the grant, you're good moving forward, follow your current data management plan. It's really for things that are going to start being awarded now.
Exactly, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you would know the answer to this or not, but so what about, let's say you had, because this policy goes active tomorrow. Let's say you put in a grant that's currently under review that does not contain a data management plan, and then it gets funded. So the notice of award would be like, you know, later this year. So what happens to that? Because there wouldn't be anything in the budget for a data management plan.
I believe that it would be everything that is being submitted starting tomorrow.
Okay.
Everything, I think so.
That's how
Everything that is already, that's how I understand. Is that how you understand it, Lauren?
that is how I understand it as well, as everything starting tomorrow. I know some people were using this plan to submit things in October of last year, but if it was awarded under the documents you submitted, then that's what you're going to be held to, is my understanding. This is really moving forward, starting with all grants starting tomorrow.
And it's possible that they could come back and say, oh, we would like you to add clarification or something like that, you know, as part of the review process. But it is still my understanding that if you have already submitted, if you're already in review, if the ball is already rolling, then this does not yet apply to you. It's for things that start the submission as of tomorrow.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other questions from anybody? And please remember, you can reach out to us at any time. Our emails should currently be on the screen. We will send the slides and make sure that everybody who attended will be able to have these slides. So you can click on the links Lauren provided and the email, you know, to the director of the NIH Policy Center there. So you will have access to all these resources. You don't have to like remember them now. And if we can't answer it, we will definitely make sure that we get you in touch with someone who can.
Yes, thank you for coming, everyone. We'll hang out just in case people have questions. If not, you'll have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much.